Hi guys, it's Kales and I'm here with my March wrap-up. I read 7 books this month, which was 2 more than what I read last month. I'm really proud of that. They were long books. The first book that I read was on my March TBR, and so I'm very excited because it was the only book I got to on my March TBR, and that book is The Boston Girl by Anita Diamant. This story follows Addie on her coming-of-age journey in the early 1900s. She's a young girl living in Boston during that time, and it's a wonderful story, very realistic of the time period, and also just very insightful to this one girl's life. What I liked most about it was that it was very realistic in terms of having all of the ups and downs of a life, and the hope and the joy and the sadness and the pain that comes with it sometimes, but in the end I felt still really good about it and very hopeful still after a lot of it, and I really liked it. It's one of my favorites of Anita Diamant's, and that's saying something considering I adapted one of her books into a play. So I was really excited to finally get to read this because it came out back in December. There were some points that were really hard to get through, and not from a reading standpoint, but from a dramatic standpoint of some heavy stuff happens, and I am just more of the mindset of I like happy things, and that's just me as a person. But honestly, it had excellent writing, excellent voice, really wonderful characters and friendships, which is something Anita Diamant does so well, and this book is no exception. I don't know where to put these now when I put them down. Oh, here. That's a spot. The next book I read in the month of March was ISLA and the Happily Ever After. I finally finished this series, if you can call it a series, because I mean the first 2 don't really connect and this one sort of awkwardly ties them in together. I love Stephanie Perkins' books, so much so that I ended up buying all of them in the same format. I had gotten ISLA from my library and I loved it so much, and I love these series so much that I ended up having to buy it and the other 2 of Lola and the Boy Next Door and Anna and the French Kiss. And I already own Anna and the French Kiss, and I had to keep this version because this one is signed. Yeah. So I have to keep this one even though it awkwardly doesn't match my other set. I was a little OCD about it. Anyway, back to ISLA. ISLA and the Happily Ever After was one of my favorites. I can't remember exactly what I gave it because it was just so happy and so rom-com-y, and there were parts of it that I had problems with in terms of like it sometimes was a little too melodramatic for me, and I knew what I was getting into and I needed a happy read, and this one was the perfect dose of happy read. The next book that I read over the course of this time, I read in the span of like 2 days because my Lauren Oliver meet and greet was this month. Her new book, Vanishing Girls, came out in March, and I was really excited to get to meet her. If you want to watch that video, click on the book. I do a full review of this book and several other of Lauren Oliver's books in that video, as well as talking about the exciting experience that was meeting Lauren Oliver. This book was one of my favorites of hers because it's a great thriller, great voice in the characters as she has for almost all of her novels. I was really happy to get to talk to her about this book and having finished it within 2 days of it coming out and then her coming to Denver, so it was really exciting to get to do that, and I really did like this book. Like I said, it's probably my second favorite of all of Lauren Oliver's books. Seconded only by Liesl and Poe, and I love that book. Next book that I read was kind of a surprise buy for me because I was in the tattered cover with my mom and I started talking about this author, Amanda Palmer, and how her TED Talk is one of my top 5 favorites, and I started reading the inside cover of it to my mom, and my mom took it out of my hands before I finished and she said, "You need to buy this book." And this book is called The Art of Asking, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Let People Help. I read this book when I was very sick. I got like this little mini flu in March and had to miss like 2 days of work, and it was brutal. I was bedridden, and this book got me through that. But this book was also filled with great anecdotes of Amanda's life and her belief in the art of asking, and she applies it mostly to music, but to art in general, and her big question is, how do we figure out not how to make people pay for art, but how to let them pay for art? And she really goes into her life and this art of asking people, and why is that so difficult for everybody, including myself, and why do we feel shame with it? How did it originate, and like I said, a lot of anecdotes are provided from her own life, but I found it very inspiring. I cried, I laughed, I loved getting to find out more about her as a person, and I found it really relatable, even though her life is so different from mine. If you want to see Amanda's TED Talk, which is kind of a shortened version of this, then you should definitely check that out. I will leave a link on the book as well. But definitely check out the book because it just brings Amanda's TED Talk to fruition, and it really is just a lengthened version of it, but I think it is worth the read and worth the time. Plus, you may learn a lot about yourself, and it's always fun to learn about somebody new. I'm surprised at how many autobiographies I'm actually enjoying, and this was most definitely one of them. The next book I read was my graphic novel that I read, and it was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I've just been always looking to own this book because I'm a big fan of the Percy Jackson series and the Heroes of Olympus series, and I really just wanted to see it for the art and actually see a visual version of this book that was not horrific and terrible, aka the movie. Good graphic novel. I think there's more. If there is more, I probably need to get them because I quite enjoyed this. The last two books that I read in the month of March, one I don't have with me because I already lent it out to my aunt, but are the Lunar Chronicles series. I read Cinder and Scarlet in the course of this month. I finally jumped aboard this train. Holy cow, I don't know why it has taken me this so long, and I think it is wildly creative, very fascinating in terms of her world building, and I think she calls it like the third era, and with the cyborgs and the humans. So the first book, Cinder, follows this young girl, Cinder, who meets Prince Kai, because she lives in New Beijing, and she herself is a cyborg, and she's a cyborg mechanic, which is super cool. She gets swept up into this adventure with the Prince Kai, and additionally there's this threat that is posing on Earth from the Lunars, and they live on Luna, which is our moon, and they're kind of this alien race that has the ability to manipulate others and the bioelectricity around them, and it's just so fascinating, and I'm so mad that I didn't wait to jump aboard this train because the last one comes out in November, and I'm gonna blaze through the third one so quick. The other thing I like about this series is that she loosely uses the fairy tales, because what's cool about them is that there are references, and you know, anybody who knows the fairy tales is going to be able to pick up on them, which is very entertaining, but it doesn't follow it to a T, and I like that. I appreciate that. I think it's a great allusion to the fairy tales, but is not a complete parody of them, or doesn't completely retell them. They're just in reference to, and I like Marissa Meyer's take on it, and I cannot wait to finish them. For me, I liked Cinder more than Scarlet, just because Scarlet was not my favorite character. I still like her. I like her sass and her sarcasm, and she's very strong. I just enjoyed Cinder more, and so in this book, when we got to follow parts of Cinder's journey, I was more excited for that than Scarlet and Wolf's journey. However, Scarlet and Wolf, I like them a lot better by the end of the book. I was more interested in following up on Cinder and her story. So that was the only reason that I liked this one a little bit less than Cinder, but trust me, it was only a little bit. So there you have it. These were my books that I read for the month of March, minus Cinder, because I gave it to my aunt. I was really happy with this finish, even though I didn't get to two of the books that I said I wanted to read. I'm not on any schedule or anything like that, so it's totally up to me. And I think this was a pretty good reading month. I'm excited to see what April brings, and to see what I hope April brings for me, look to my April TBR video, which should be coming up very soon after this one. Until next time, guys, bye! Hi guys, it's Kales, and I'm at the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry for the very first time. And those of you who don't know, I'm a huge nerd, especially for museums. I've